I'm Nathan from Hargeaves Lansdown. I'm our Senior Policy Analyst. I'm talking to you today about connecting with customers, which is a massive topic. It's a massive topic this year because we've got huge amounts of regulatory change coming down the tracks. Some of it looks spectacular, some of it doesn't look quite so spectacular, and there is a real opportunity for regulation that impacts on retail investors to really develop to allow people to better connect with consumers. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some nice bits to think through. I've only got 10 minutes. This is going to be a stretch, so when I get hooked off early, you know why. So I was just going to give you a quick overview. So quick background of who HL are, a little bit of how our client base has been changing. I'll talk a little bit about what we think clients want and then come on to how we're sort of thinking about blending that with what they need. So very much from an HL perspective. This is the shape of HL's changing client base over the last 10 years. So essentially HL, as a bit of a recap, we've got three different ways that we sort of communicate and interact with clients. We have the one that we're probably best known for, which is our investment platform. So clients come to us, they're informed, they want information, they come and then transact on our platform. We have the group of people who perhaps aren't quite as comfortable making those decisions, potentially at that point in their life, so they pay us for financial advice, for a personal recommendation. And we have the third group, which are clients that have not chosen us at all. They've come to us because they happen to work for an employer that uses our workplace pension. So that group, that sort of look across those three segments really helps us to understand clients because they all have massively different competing interests. And what the slide shows you is basically the growing number of clients. So partly because HL has been successful, partly because retail investing has been growing in popularity. But you can see that change in the age profile, particularly from 5 years ago to now, where you've got that big growth in younger clients. So where we're thinking about product development and how we're thinking about helping our clients in the future, it's that growth in those younger people who actually have to take control of their financial future. So what do clients want? I think the key thing here is that, and I'm sure everyone in this room is aware, everyone's different, okay? Everyone's completely different. You've got people with different ages, different appetite to risk, different wealth, different family situations. So trying to think that we know what people want universally is very, very difficult. We need to think about people as individuals when we're trying to communicate with them, when we're trying to connect with them. So certainly how we're thinking through things at Hargeaves Lansdown is about how we can drive greater personalisation to connect with those people to help improve their decision making. I think one thing that we probably can be quite confident about though is that when we think about this group of people who have different wants, there's one thing that we can be quite confident on is that they don't want to spend all, or most people don't want to spend all their time thinking about their finances. So if we can give them the confidence to not interact so regularly with financial services, that's universally a good thing. Caveat, we have a group of clients called our hobbyists who absolutely love spending all of their time looking at finances. They're kind of a bit slightly older share dealers. And for them, but this is, I think, quite important because we assume, and there's certainly a narrative that assumes that everyone's about wealth creation when they come to interact with financial services. Not true. We have got groups of people that do invest because they enjoy it and they find it interesting and stimulating. Just wanted to touch quickly on goals. I think one of the things that the industry misses here is they assume that everyone comes to investing with a goal. Not our experience at all. This work that I'm showing you here, it's an extract from some work Tizer conducted with EY Seren. We sponsored this. We were very keen to make sure that in this work, the ones about one of the motivations being making your money work harder and because you think it's the right thing to do were put in there because that's what we recognise are big motivations for people to invest. And you can see when they're put in the list of things that people can choose from, they come up very highly up the list. So thinking that everyone's coming to financial services with a goal in mind is wrong. Actually just being aspirational, making their money work harder is a big motivating factor. So that's how we think through a lot of our design. I wanted to share this with you because we have been doing loads of work on what good client outcomes look like, because clearly it's the biggest buzz term in the industry. I don't think we've really, as an industry, articulated what universally good looks like. So we did a bunch of research. I won't go into the details, but the firm we partnered with came up with 10 high-level things of what clients think are a good outcome. Now, clearly, you can't ask them that. They won't give you those answers. So there was some depth to this research. And I think the reason I wanted to show you this at a high level is that there's a few of these that are really kind of finance related. So able to retire when and how I want, tax efficient access. These are things that are jobs to be done by clients. They actually want the finance side of it. But there's loads of things that are about their confidence. So feeling safe and supported, being engaged and up to date, having access to expertise. That's not about their financial outcome. That's about them feeling confident on the journey. So again, when we're thinking about delivery, we're thinking about sort of factoring these softer facts into how we help clients. So on assistance, I was just going to say, so that does that mean clients always want advice? No, it doesn't. I mean, you might think that I'd say that. But broadly, we think of clients as not advised clients or non-advised clients, just people who need help. And at some points in their journey, they will be able to get on by themselves. Others, they'll dip in and take advice and then be happy to come back. And the catalyst that we've seen for people wanting advice are when the amount of money gets so large that they don't feel confident that an error might not catastrophically sort of ruin their financial future. And the second one, when they're dealing with loads of things that are new and complicated, which is perfectly why everyone takes advice at retirement, or certainly lots of people do. So that's how we see things. Currently, I think around 8 in 10 of the advice cases that we have are one-off. They're not ongoing advice, despite us offering both. So where you give choice, there is a demand where people who do want advice don't necessarily want to have it on an ongoing basis. I'll skip over this, but basically, again, from that Tizer work, just says people don't necessarily believe that fee-paying advice is for them, or fee-paying help. So again, we know there's an advice boundary. We know that people aren't sure about paying for those services, and so something that we're factoring in terms of how we help, because we have advised services, we have non-advised. We just want to make sure that people get access to the service that's right for them. I'm going at breakneck speed. What I'm going to talk to you now just slightly on is, what do customers need? So one of the things that we think they need is improved financial resilience. Now, this comes from work that we've rather ambitiously set about trying to measure the financial resilience of households in the UK. We partnered with Oxford Economics. What they basically do is take a whole bunch of data sets from ONS, the financialised data, et cetera, and they basically map 16 different indicators, which are kind of from a financial planning perspective of how we'd measure financial resilience. Now, I've picked 3 just to kind of to sort of give you a flavour here. So navy blue, 3 months of essential expenditure, proportion of households that have got that. The green is whether the proportion that have got adequate life cover. The blue is the proportion that are on track for a moderate retirement income, so that's based on the PLSA figures. And then we've charted from, I'm trying to get my rights and lefts, from here to here. We've got lowest income households going through to highest income households. So what you can see is, okay, the more money you have, the more financially resilient you are, but you've still got these 4th and 5th quintile households. A big proportion of them aren't on track for retirement. They haven't, and this is not necessarily the retirement they want, it's the moderate income standards that we're talking about from the PLSA. Around 10% of that highest income household haven't got enough cash in the bank to cover 3 months essential expenditure. So when you do the deep dive analysis, there are groups who just quite frankly aren't as financially resilient as they need to be. But no one's going to say to you, wake up in the morning and go, I really want to be more financially resilient. But that's kind of what they need. So how do we kind of blend the two? Now, one of the ways that we're thinking through things, I've led some work internally where we start to dial into what do we think the key things are that clients should be doing. So not what should they definitely do, what are the decision-making processes that we should take them through in certain areas. Now, I've just put 5 up here, which are where we talk about reviewing an investment portfolio. So I think HL was definitely guilty of that. Basically, when we're sort of thinking through this challenge, it's very, very easy. Hargeaves Lansdown very guilty of this in the past. I see this quite often, though, in the industry. We sell investments to people. People come and buy those investments, and then you say, don't worry, just review them ongoing. And the problem is no one knows how they review them. So actually, this is kind of the start of our process is, well, actually, let's articulate what we think that review process looks like. Let's start to communicate that with clients. Let's start to build products that allow them to kind of do that easily. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to drive the decision-making, not to tell them what they should do, but so that when they come to those decision-making points, that they're reviewing the right information at those times. Again, it's not going to be what clients want, but it's kind of what they need, the process that they need to go through. So kind of trying to take an advisory approach into a non-advised space. I just wanted to give you a sort of real-life application of this. So this is in the retirement space. This was for our drawdown journey. That got a revision. And two of the main principles that we had in the background that kind of were influencing this were that when you think about who's right for drawdown, we kind of split that in two when we did some ideation around it. And the main thing is that really, there's no reason why someone shouldn't come and take tax-free cash from their pension. There's no real suitability element on that because people are taking enough plus anyway, so why wouldn't we encourage them to do a lump sum from drawdown? But when it comes to taking income from a pension, that's a different decision. There's other criteria that we want them to consider at the point of starting to draw income. So we saw it as two very distinct decision points. What we found is that 7 in 10 clients were taking only the tax-free lump sum. But like many firms, we had everything all lumped into one journey. So we were asking them to consider the lump sum and the income all at the same time. So what we did, after extensive user testing, is completely decouple those parts of the journey, because we recognised that clients were just getting bombarded by all this information. So where you split that out, which isn't necessarily how you'd think to do it based on the rules, but actually when you do it from a client-led perspective of knowing what we want them to consider and then understanding whether they can understand that or not, you get a completely different journey. And we previously had 3 in 10 clients would go for partial drawdown. So our view was always people should only really take the amount of money they need from the pension, because if they keep it in there, it's tax-free, you don't get it out in cash, it doesn't risk leaking out of your pension. So if people need it, great, take it, but don't just take it and sit it in cash, because that's probably not working as hard as it could do for you. So our change took 3 in 10 people doing this partial drawdown approach to 6 in 10 doing partial drawdown. So we had a clear view of this is kind of how we want clients to think about it, because we think this is broadly the right way to think about it. You split the journey based on client comprehension and completely change the outcome. So this is something we talk to the FCA quite a lot about, because that's all going through the same set of regulation, and you've got a completely different outcome for clients as a result. So I'll just come to my final bit, which was, do clients need advice? So I would actually say yes, they definitely do need advice. They just don't need advice all the time. So actually, I think what we need to think about from an HL perspective, but I think from a wider industry perspective, it's about how do you give the right information to people at the right time? We talk to the FCA a lot about personalisation of information. We're not talking about sending more information to clients. We're saying, how can we personalise to give them less information? In the example that we've just given on drawdown there, if you give people less information in the moment they're trying to consider something, they're more likely to be able to make the decisions that are going to be right at that point in time. So for us, generally, we just think there's an ability to personalise information, to use data that we hold about clients coupled with data that they'll give us to improve that personalisation. We do think there needs to be a shift in the advice guidance boundary to allow that. But we think this has massive opportunities for the whole industry, because our hypothesis is that as people understand more and we can grow their knowledge, they're more likely to know when they don't know enough and go and take advice. But I think the kind of key thing for us is that you can't always give clients exactly what they want. You need to blend it with also what you think is good for them if you're going to drive the right good outcomes. So well over time, but hopefully that was interesting.
Well worth it. Thank you. While you're thinking of questions, I wanted to reflect on what we heard in the first panel, Nathan, where there was a couple of people talking about the importance of simplicity of choice, and Jackie was talking about the 3 choices, I think it was, so low, medium, high risk for the Lloyds banking customers. Richard talked about I think he had 5 investment options, and that I'd just be interested in your views on choice and where you know, whether people feel paralyzed because you offer an enormous amount of choice, and how important it is to personalize that experience to help them whittle down their choice.
Yeah, so, I mean, definitely choice is good. There's no doubt about that, because people want to have control of their financial future. But it doesn't mean that everyone needs to have the full spectrum of choice positioned to them straight away. So what we are developing is different journeys based on how people want to interact. So do people want to have us help them and do it for them, or do they want to do it completely themselves? And then we can basically design journeys that go, right, HL, you get out of the way because I know what I'm doing. And so it's actually the design for a very wide audience like that, where you have got people who are really sophisticated and people who are newbies, is quite challenging. The thing that I think we're very sort of clear on this point, we as a provider, but I don't think the industry should dictate the starting point for clients. So the point that Jackie made actually in the first session about people coming in to start with meme investing, we had loads of that. You saw from the chart that I showed. But actually the benefit for us here is about taking them, that interest and that excitement, and dragging them into being a bit more of a considered investor rather than just a speculator. So we have programs already that are delivering ongoing nudges to talk about diversification, to talk about lowering risk, and to think about that for these people who start off with an individual share. And we have, you know, quite a lot of success around sort of nudging that behavior. Now, I would say that that's incredibly important that you keep that on the table, rather than assuming that everyone wants to start in a, dare I say it, a very boring multi-asset fund, because you're not going to get the excitement there. That might be what we as an industry think is a good outcome. We certainly do, and we have products to do that, but you're not necessarily going to get people into investing, and that's really kind of an important thing to hold on to and drive towards, I think.
I remember having a conversation with you during lockdown, and it was, you know, somebody comes in and buys a GameStop share, you can't then start marketing them globally diversified multi-asset funds, exactly. Even if it might be the best thing for them, right? We take them on a journey. We're out of time. That was an absolutely fantastic session. Thank you, Nathan.